Welcome, everyone. This week on our What's Up Wednesday interview session, we are joined by Sue Renner today. She's the executive director of the David and Laura Merage Foundation and Care for All Children. She's going to be covering the American Rescue Plan Act's impact on the child care industry and what that means for parents and providers. So hi, Sue. Welcome, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi. Thank you, Milena.
Of course. All right. So to get started, we hear the term child care market often. So can you kind of explain what that is and kind of why that matters when we think of our businesses in that way?
Sure. Unlike K-12, most of childcare is delivered by the private sector. So these are small, independent businesses for the most part. Many of them are micro businesses, family childcare homes. About 86% of the market of childcare is private. And so when we think about how do we take public dollars and invest in childcare, it's much different than K-12 and higher ed. Where K-12 and higher ed have public systems, they have a lot of infrastructure. You can quickly get money to a system like that for relief, for instance. When we talk about childcare, we're talking about trying to get relief dollars to very small businesses that can be very disparate. So they're not very well connected to each other. So unlike the providers that are in the ELV network, most childcare providers don't have that kind of backbone.
Right. Perfect. Yeah, that's a good overview to kind of break it down and explain where we're coming from with this. So can you tell us a bit about what the American Rescue Plan is?
Yes. So it's being referred to as ARPA. So that's how I'll speak about it today. And the American Rescue Plan is the second major infusion of federal dollars to bring some economic relief to the pandemic effects on our economy. So the first one was known as the CARES Act, and that was last December. And that brought significant resources to the childcare sector, about $15 billion across the country. And this is now the second verse of that, if you will. Of course, it's a new administration, so it actually has some different complexities and different, nuances than the CARES Act. And one of the best things for us in childcare was it significantly increased the recovery dollars that are going into childcare.
Right. Okay, that's awesome. Good overview on that as well. So how does this childcare portion of ARPA impact parents also?
Yeah, what's really, really exciting about ARPA is that for the first time in our country, we're able to seriously address the child tax credit. And just to kind of give a grounding, the child tax credit previously was $2,000 that every parent would receive per child. And you would receive those dollars when you filed your income tax.
Right.
You could actually put in the number of children you had, and you would get this credit. Well, a couple of really important things happened during ARPA. First and foremost, they increased it significantly. So for children under 6, it's now $3,600. So almost double what it was. But secondly, it's going to be fully refundable. So that means if you are making less than you weren't, let's say you just weren't filing taxes, you had no reason to file income tax.
Sure.
You would never see this credit. But now, because it's fully refundable, you are all income levels up to about $400,000 a year for a family will receive this credit. And the other really exciting thing about it, Milena, is that they are going to institute a more regular way to distribute the money. So rather than waiting till you file your income tax and then you get those dollars, now they're going to start, they're hoping by this July, and it will be a monthly payment to families.
Got it.
So very similar to the way that the $1,400 stimulus checks were distributed. Mm-hmm. Families will start to see this child credit.
Got it.
So for a family with 2 children under age 6, they're going to receive $7,200. And so what we're trying to get the word out about is that for families who never had any help with childcare expenses before, which is the majority of families, they'll be able to take the $7,200 and immediately start putting that to their childcare tuition.
Wonderful. Perfect. So we covered the parent side. So what does this mean for providers on the other hand?
Yeah. Can I say a couple other things though about
Oh my
parents
gosh, yeah.
before we leave? Because there's a couple other things that were done under ARPA. And also to note, everything that was done under ARPA is a 1-year plan, but we're working with our Care for All Children advocacy movement and other advocates to try to make sure that these all become permanent, because there's no question that they're long
Still
overdue.
needed. Right.
Yeah. So the two other things that parents should know about is they have also increased the amount. There's another tax deduction that's known as the Child and Dependent Care Tax Deduction. And that is specifically for your child care expenses. And previously the upper limit on that was about $5,000 a year. They've doubled that. So now you'll be able to, if you have childcare expenses that are closer to $10,000 a year, you'll be able to take that full deduction.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And just to note, there are technicalities with it. Parents do need to speak with their tax advisor, but sure, it's significantly increased. And then the third tax benefit is a flexible spending account. So not all employers have them, but if your employer has a flexible spending account, there's a portion of that can be used for childcare. And why that is important is because it reduces your taxable income. Sure. So it's basically a pre-tax way to pay for your childcare expenses. That previously also was about a $5,000 a year limit. It is now $10,500.
Double that as well. Okay.
So you can take $10,500 off your taxable income. It can make a big difference.
Oh, for sure. That's great. Yeah, to cover several ways that impacts parents. So then, yeah, so for the providers, that standpoint within our network, what does that mean for them as well?
Well, we really want providers to know about this because it's something that they can talk to families about, particularly families that are just going month to month and trying to figure out how to pay their childcare tuition. Make sure that they do know that these are in place. And also providers can help with the advocacy. Sure. They can lift up their voices when it comes to their elected officials. Now, this is federal. So we're talking about our representatives in Congress and our senators. But to pick up the phone, to write a letter, to send an email and say, hey, this matters to my families.
This is why you should be right.
Yeah, it matters to my business because, Melena, as you know, providers, they want to deliver the highest quality care possible. And sometimes that's constrained by what families can pay.
Sure.
Families cannot always afford the cost of quality. And so providers then are kind of boxed in to say, well, I can only deliver the quality that my parents can afford.
Right.
We want to break that conundrum. We want to change it. And we want to make sure that families have the support they need to pay the cost of quality.
Because they deserve that. Everyone does. Right. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
So you touched on it a little bit, but what is that impact of the dependent care flexible spending account?
Yeah, we would love to see more employers offer this. There's some administrative expense to it, but it's not huge. It's not unreasonable. Let's just say that. And basically, if an employer offers any sort of prepaid medical account, a flexible spending account, right, the child care flexible spending is just a component of that. So there really isn't anything additional the employer would need to do. It's really about the employee asking for it. And if I can point out that the group that we're going to address with this, the group of parents, are those parents who are what we consider very traditional middle income. Okay. So these are not low-income parents. We have a variety of supports for childcare for low-income parents. Middle-income parents are unfortunately totally left out of most of that support. Sure. But something like a flexible spending account could really benefit them in terms of how much tax they're paying. So they can actually keep more of their earnings, which is something that we think is so important, especially with very, very young children.
Oh, for sure. Exactly. Okay. So how can we help ensure more employers do take advantage of that?
The parents ask.
Just ask.
Just ask. Just go to your HR department, go to the owner of your company, let them know what you're paying for childcare. You know, Melina, that's something else we've discovered in our work, our advocacy work, is that, you know, parents are very reluctant to talk to anyone, let alone their employer, about how difficult it is to pay for childcare.
It's so true.
And yet, until we can start flipping that script, until we can get parents more comfortable with talking about the extraordinary burden of childcare expense, and also providers to talk about it, because we certainly don't want to set this up where it's, oh, childcare is so expensive, providers must be, you know, somehow ripping off parents. No, you know, and I know that's not the case.
Right, not at all.
It's not at all. So we need both providers to lift up their voice about what is the true cost of quality by the time they pay livable wages, their employees' benefits, they have nutritious food, there is a cost to that. And what's happened is for many, many, many decades, we've relied 100% on parents to bear the cost of that.
Sure.
So things like these tax credits, and then some of the other things we're going to talk about, can all help with that. It can all help about increasing the public investment and really increasing the societal, taking on some of the load for it.
Sharing
that load, which again, we do with K-12 and we do with higher ed. We don't bat an eye about that as a taxpayer. But for some reason, children birth to 5, we just have not really done that well.
That's very true. Yeah. So how could the impact of ARPA directly mean for the supply of childcare? What could that mean?
Yeah, so there's a completely separate bucket in the ARPA for childcare. And it is basically what they're calling sustainability grants. So they're going to be giving hundreds of millions of dollars. We think Colorado will get about $250 million in the form of these sustainability grants. And then it'll be up to the states to figure out how best to distribute that.
Okay.
So what we learned from the CARES Act, where we had that, we didn't have nearly that much money, but we did have some money put into the supply of childcare.
Sure.
What Colorado did was a pretty comprehensive process of getting input from the provider community about what they needed, what could really make a difference to their business right now. They talked to employers and they talked to parents, and they came up with a plan. A portion of the CARES Act dollars will be direct payments to providers based on the number of children they're serving. Another portion of the dollars will be going into a range of quality improvement initiatives, including additional mental health services for the childcare sector for families. So we're thinking that Colorado's approach to the ARPA funding will be really similar. So what's going to be important to providers is that they're really watching their email. They're looking for messages related to ARPA and
keep your eyes out.
Keep your eyes out, and then step up and give input about it.
Okay.
How best would it support your business? Because a business serving 250 children versus a business serving 5 is very different. And, you know, so we want to make sure that providers across the market of childcare are having an opportunity to lift up their voices.
Have their chance be heard. Right. Okay. So can you explain why it's important that we know about these changes in complex policies that are around now?
Yeah, absolutely. Because this is public funding, and that requires public input.
Right.
You know, this isn't decisions about how these dollars are going to be spent in Colorado are not made by Governor Polis. They're really made collectively, and there's opportunity for providers to give their input. If a provider feels like he or she has not had that input, they need to let organizations like ELV know. And then ELV can help set up some opportunities for them to be able to give better input.
Okay.
Because it's really important that that we spend these dollars wisely. We need to maintain the public trust. The last thing we would want to hear is from a group of providers who said, "What? I never received any of these dollars. My business wasn't helped by these dollars." That's not what we want. We want to make sure that these dollars go to their highest and best purpose. And then secondly, we want to see it be made permanent. So just like the child tax credit, our goal is to have a substantially increased federal investment in childcare. We believe this administration, we really see this as our time, Elena, to do that. But again, it's going to be a matter of advocacy. If, I'm not sure if your listeners today realize, but the childcare industry doesn't have the kind of lobbying that the healthcare industry has.
At all. Right.
Oil and gas. And so it's imperative that every voice counts, and we have to figure out how to lift them up. And that's what we're doing with the Care for All Children campaign.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of that, we see the branding there at the bottom. So for people who may not have heard of it at all, may not know, tell us, what is Care for All Children?
Yeah, we're pretty new out of the gate. But our goal with the campaign is to, as I said earlier, flip the script about childcare affordability. This should not be a parent's burden. This should be a shared collective responsibility. We all benefit as a society when children have access to quality childcare. There's no question about that. We've proven that,
time and time,
many times, many studies. And so now what we need to do is be honest and say, okay, if we all benefit when children have access to quality care, maybe we should all contribute a little bit. So just the way that we all contribute to the highways, it doesn't mean I ever drive on, XYZ highway, but I still contribute to it because it's our collective infrastructure. It's our collective highway system. We want that same approach to childcare. Okay,
perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. So why do you think it's important that we all join that Care for All Children movement? You touched on it before, but yeah.
I mean, Melina, we've been, over the past decade with the David and Laura Merage Foundation, we have been spending a significant amount of time advocating for the needs of very young children. And we often hear when we meet with senators and other elected officials that, childcare affordability is not a problem in my state. I've never heard about it. I don't hear from parents. Well, of course they don't. Parents are busy.
They don't have time for that, right?
They don't have time for that. They're working. They're paying for childcare. So we thought, wow, we need a communications platform. We need a way for parents to just very easily say, yep, problem for me. Yep, I want the government to do something about it.
Right. I agree. I'm on that team. Right.
Yeah, count me in. And then we also want allies, because it can't just be parents.
Sure.
So we want childcare business owners, we want grandparents, we want all kinds of people who believe in quality childcare. We want them to say, yes, I care too. And right now we have an opportunity through social media. It's pretty easy to like our Facebook page, to like an Instagram, and then we can sort of collectively say, yes, we have a movement.
As a whole, right.
We have a movement. And even though right now people say, well, President Biden's going to take care of this, he wants to, but he needs our help. And he needs our voice.
Can't do it alone, right?
No, he cannot do it alone. There's too many competing high priority issues. So we have to definitely maintain a drumbeat. We have to make sure that it's in every single state in the country. Of course, Colorado is our home base. And again, we've got some exciting things going on in Colorado right now, but let's make sure that Governor Polis knows that the industry appreciates us and the industry is behind him.
We care and we need, right. Okay, well, to wrap it up here before we close, feel free to share any information about the upcoming info session with the webinar. And also we'll be putting a one-pager link down in the comments as well. So feel free to share anything, kind of final thoughts and resources as well here.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to the webinar that ELV is hosting in a couple of weeks, where we'll go into a lot more detail on these tax credits, on the dollars that are going to go on the supply side of childcare. We'll detail those.
Right.
We'll also give more of an overview of what we consider to be the next phase of the Biden administration support for childcare.
Okay.
So we're really, really hopeful, Melina, that the infrastructure bill that's being discussed right now will make these childcare tax credits permanent, and that it will also have, the supply side dollars, if not made permanent, at least enough for the next few years to really start to make a difference on the quality and supply of childcare in this country.
Sure. Perfect. Yep. Like Sue said, that webinar's coming up. It'll be at 10 a.m. rather than our typical one. So just keep an eye out on your inbox. Make sure you just like our pages and everything to stay up to date on that. But that's it. I will also put the webinar link in the comments and description as well. But thank you so much, Sue. Such informative information. We're looking forward to speaking with you again on the webinar.
Yeah, and thank you for hosting. This is
of course
platform.
Awesome. Bye, everybody. See you next week. Have a good one.